It was a quiet Sunday morning in Colorado. Snow painted the sidewalks like God himself had pressed pause on time. Esther stood in the kitchen in her soft gray robe, flipping pancakes, humming oceans under her breath. Her husband, tall and warm-eyed, kissed her on the cheek, already dressed for to go out. Their daughter Zoe, 10, had her book open and was underlining a chapter. Ezra, just 6, had a crayon in one hand and half a memory verse in the other. They were the kind of family that had a prayerful mom who prayed before school, during meals, and before bed. Literally, Esther has to pray before anything or any decision at home. Esther didn't just love God. She depended on him. She covered her family daily, Psalm 91, Ephesians 6, and declarations that could silence storms. She had seen prayer move mountains. She had seen it heal her mother of stage 4 cancer. So she believed, deeply, that no weapon formed against her family would prosper. But that morning, as she hugged her kids a little tighter before they left for their cousin's birthday trip with Malik, something in her spirit trembled. She brushed it off. Maybe it was just a mother's anxiety. Maybe it was just the weather. She didn't know it yet. But that would be the last time she'd ever see her family the same way again. "Honey, I feel a certain type of way about this trip," she said. Malik, thinking it was just another strategy to stop them from going, chuckled. "Baby, you can always pray about it. You refuse to come with us, saying you're fasting, literally, all the time. Can't you just spare today for this trip? It's going to be fun. You can always change your mind." Esther tried to emphasize how she felt, but Malik dismissed her concerns, saying they had no reason to be afraid. After all, they had her, and she was very close to God. After her family drove off, she stood by the window far longer than she usually did, eyes fixed on the road, the cold glass against her hand. Malik's car disappeared into the snowy distance, and yet she couldn't walk away. Her stomach tightened. Her spirit felt uneasy. So she prayed. Not her usual "God go with them" kind of prayer. No, this time it was desperate. Intense. A prayer of intercession. She walked her living room floor like a woman waging war in the spirit. "Father, protect them. Cancel every assignment of the enemy. Dispatch your angels now. Now, Lord. Cover Malik. Cover Zoe. Cover Ezra. Let no harm come near them." It went on for nearly 30 minutes. She couldn't stop. Then suddenly, peace. A calm so strange it made her sit down. She opened her Bible, and her eyes landed on Job 1 verse 10. "Have you not put a hedge around him and his household and everything he has?" She smiled. That was her confirmation. God had them. So she got dressed and went to church alone, not knowing that at that exact moment, somewhere along the icy highway, Malik was driving, singing along to a fun song on the radio. The kids were in the back seat, singing loudly with him and laughing. His youngest, Zara, kept messing up the words, which only made everyone laugh more. "Go faster, Daddy," one of them shouted. Malik laughed. "If I go any faster, we'll fly off the road." The kids screamed with joy, enjoying every second. Inside the car, it was warm and full of life. Outside, it was raining slightly, and the road was wet and slippery. Malik held the steering wheel a little tighter and slowed down a bit, just to be safe. But behind them, a large truck was coming fast. The driver had been drinking. His eyes were tired, and he wasn't really watching the road. A bottle lay on the floor of the truck. He didn't notice that he was drifting out of his lane. Then everything happened at once. The truck swerved. Malik saw it coming too late. He grabbed the wheel and shouted, "Hold on." The children screamed. The car slid on the pavement. Malik tried to turn, but the SUV hit the guardrail and spun. And then, the truck slammed into them. A loud crash filled the air. Glass shattered. Metal bent and broke. The car flipped, then stopped in a broken heap on the side of the road. Back in church, Esther stood, eyes closed, hands lifted, completely unaware that her life was about to split in half, before and after. The world as she knew it had already started falling apart. The choir was singing "Waymaker," Esther's favorite. She stood with her hands lifted high, swaying softly. The kind of worship where you forget you're in a room full of people, where it's just you and God. Until her phone buzzed. She ignored it. It buzzed again, and again. 3 missed calls from the same unknown number. She stepped outside, annoyed, her heels clicking against the church tiles. Then she answered. The voice on the other end was trembling. "Hello? Is this Esther Williams?" "Yes," she said slowly. the worship still ringing faintly behind her. There's been an accident. I'm sorry. It's your husband and your children. She didn't scream. Not at first. She just froze, like her heart couldn't move fast enough to catch up with what she was hearing. What happened? What do you mean accident? Please, ma'am. The voice stammered. You need to come to County General. Now. She didn't remember walking back into the church. She didn't remember falling to the ground. All she remembered was the look on her friend's face when she whispered. They said it's Malik and the kids. Everything after that was a blur. The drive to the hospital. The cold white lights. The nurse that refused to meet her eyes. The doctor that pulled her aside. The sound she made when they told her. None of them made it. Not Malik. Not her baby boy, Ezra. Not little Zoe, who hadn't even turned 6. And right there, in the sterile hallway of County General, Esther collapsed. Her knees hit the floor. Her spirit shattered. She had been praying. She had been faithful. She was supposed to be covered. But now she was alone. Esther didn't speak for 3 days. Not to the nurses who tried to bring her water. Not to her mother-in-law, who flew in the next morning and sat beside her hospital bed in silence. Not to the chaplain who gently offered, "Would you like to pray?" She didn't want to pray. She had prayed before the accident. She had prayed every morning, every night, over her husband, over her kids. She had laid hands on their foreheads while they slept. She had anointed their pillows with oil. She had fasted for days when Ezra had a fever. She had worshipped through tears, spoken in tongues, stood in the gap. And yet, she was still standing in a hospital hallway with no one left to pray for. She stared at the same spot on the ceiling, numb, hearing her own voice from the past echo inside her head. My family is covered. No weapon formed against us shall prosper. But the weapon had prospered. It hadn't just formed, it had landed. And it had killed. God. She whispered one night, her voice hoarse, eyes swollen shut. If you're real, if you're still here, why me? No voice came back. No burning bush. No vision. No comfort. Just silence. Esther thought God had left her, but up till this point, she hasn't still realized God isn't done with her. Not yet. Because now she wasn't just grieving. She was confused. She was angry. And most painfully of all, she was starting to feel forgotten. The woman who prayed for everyone had no one praying for her. The woman everyone called strong had just become invisible. And no one, not even heaven, seemed to notice. The funeral was quiet. Too quiet for 3 coffins. Esther sat in the front row, pale, motionless, dressed in black, but she didn't cry. Her tears had dried up in the hospital. What was left now was something else. Something colder. Something that felt like a slow, steady death inside her chest. She didn't feel like a wife. She didn't feel like a mother. She didn't feel like a woman of God. She felt like an echo in her own life. After the service, people came to hug her, to say things like, God gives his toughest battles to his strongest soldiers. They're in a better place now. You're still young. You can have more children. Esther didn't speak. She just nodded like her soul had left her body. But that night, when the house was finally empty and the last casserole dish had been dropped off, she stood in the hallway outside her children's rooms and stared at the closed doors. She opened Ezra's room first. The toy truck on the shelf. The little shoes by the bed. His favorite blanket still half folded on the chair. She collapsed onto the floor. God, what did I do? She whispered, her voice barely audible. I served you. I trusted you. I didn't ask for riches. I just wanted to be their mother. But now, what was a mother without children? What was a prayer warrior without results? She picked up Ezra's stuffed lion and held it against her chest like it might bring him back. But all it brought was a scent, faint, like memory. And with it came something that terrified her more than grief. Doubt. Her grief became a heavy fog that clouded even her faith. She stopped attending church. Her once warm, spirit-filled home became cold and silent. She lost peace. One evening, as rain pelted the roof, she was searching for something and she stumbled on her Bible. She was reluctant at first, but something kept pushing her, and she opened her Bible. It fell to the book of Job. She read with trembling fingers. He was blameless and upright, one who feared God and shunned evil. And Job would rise early in the morning and offer burnt offerings for each of them. For Job said, It may be that my children have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. Thus Job did continually. Job 1 verses 1 and 5. Tears welled up. Like her, Job had interceded for his children. But God still allowed loss. Not because Job was faithless, but because God's plans were deeper than human understanding. And in the end, God restored Job. She wept again, but this time, not in despair. In surrender, she realized she had covered her family in prayer, but she hadn't taught them how to pray. She had fought their battles, but hadn't trained them to fight on their knees. They leaned on her relationship with God, but hadn't built their own. It broke her, but it also awakened something in her. Months turned to years. Slowly, she began to heal. She went back to church not just to worship, but to serve. She began mentoring young mothers, teaching them not just to intercede, but to disciple their children in the Word. She also conducted Bible study lessons for children, teaching them how to build solid relationship with God. Then, one day, God brought something new. David was a widower, a quiet, deeply godly man. He had lost his wife to cancer and was raising his only son, Caleb, alone. He had seen Mama Esther at a church retreat and was drawn to her strength, her gentleness, and her fire for God, even in pain. His son Caleb had shared some of the stories Esther told them during Bible study. Their friendship blossomed, and in time, they got married. It was a different kind of home now, joyful, yet deeply rooted in truth. Every morning, Esther and David read the Word with Caleb. They prayed with him and encouraged him to pray aloud. When Caleb was confused about life or school or fear, Mama Esther didn't just say, "I'll pray for you." She would say, "Let's pray together. Talk to God. He's your best friend." One night, she overheard Caleb in his room, praying in his own words, talking to God like a friend. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Thank you, Lord. This time, they will know you." One early morning, Esther had woken up with a slight headache, but she overlooked it, thinking that it might be due to the stress from the women's retreat she just concluded yesterday. She decided to rest after preparing Caleb for school. Her husband was to take him to school. While they left, she decided to clean up the used plates in the kitchen, and as she was doing that, she suddenly felt dizzy. Before she could reach the kitchen door, she collapsed on the floor. Mr. David came back to pick up a document he forgot. He called his wife's name, but she didn't respond. On getting to the kitchen, he was shocked to see her on the floor. He quickly rushed her to the hospital. David was pacing anxiously in the waiting room. "God, please not again. I don't want to lose my wife." Minutes later, the doctor came out with a stunned smile. "Mr. David," he said, "your wife is fine, but there's something else. Not only is she pregnant, but we heard 2 heartbeats." David's mouth fell open. Twins. Esther was placed on bed rest for 2 days due to mild stress, then discharged with a glowing report. The pregnancy went smoothly, no complications, no fears, just songs, prayers, and preparation. Months later, she gave birth to a healthy baby boy and girl. Caleb was the proudest big brother in the world, their home bursting with life, laughter, and purpose. Esther held her newborns in her arms and whispered, "This time, Lord, I will raise them to know you, not just to hear about you, but to love you." Personally, God restored her, not just with a husband or kids or laughter. He restored her understanding. He gave her wisdom and a new calling to raise a generation who would know God, not just depend on the prayers of others. Her prayers didn't fail, but now she understood they were just the beginning. Moral of the story: prayers are powerful, but even more powerful is raising a generation that knows how to seek God for themselves. God hears the cries of a mother. He restores. He renews. And when He gives back, it's always more than what was lost.